Scientists at the University of Cambridge in England have been looking into the materials used to make cricket bats, and they suggest that bamboo, rather than traditional willow, would make the sport more sustainable and also more accessible. Now, I've been speaking to Dr. Darshil Shah, former Thailand under-19 player who co-authored the research, and he's been telling me more about this research project and how it came about.
So I work at the Centre for Natural Material Innovation at the Department for Architecture at Cambridge, and we work with a range of different natural materials as sustainable and high-performance innovative alternatives to conventional materials. So we look at timber and bamboo as alternatives to concrete and steel for constructions, and this was a slightly unusual study for us in the sense we are looking to replace an already natural material, willow, with another natural material, bamboo. Some of the interests came because I am a cricketer myself, so it was kind of a pet project, but also because there is quite a bit of shortage of willow, and there are some problems associated with it. And with the reach of the game increasing, I used to play for Thailand a very long time ago. And with the spread of the game into Mexico, Argentina, the UAE, China, Japan, and all of these fantastic countries joining in to celebrate the game, and widening participation becomes quite important. And therefore, the supply of willow and the cost of cricket bats becomes a challenge. And also some of the sustainability aspects, because it is primarily or predominantly English willow that is used for cricket blades.
I'll come to the laws of the game in a moment about the material of the bat, but on a performance aspect then, how did bamboo compare to willow?
So there are a couple of things. Firstly, the overwhelming feeling when one lifts the bamboo cricket bat.
Oh, showing me one on the screen. I like this. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's quite heavy. It's 40% heavier than a usual willow bat. And that is usually the first overwhelming feeling. And that can influence the decision-making of certain players. Some people don't like heavier bats. But the performance-related aspects that make this a great example of material innovation is the sweet spot, in that the sweet spot is sweeter. So the bamboo as a material transfers energy more efficiently to the ball than willow would. The sweet spot is larger in its size as well. So it's a bit harder to miss time shots or easier to time shots. And also
bowlers aren't liking the sound of this.
The sweet spot is also lower, so it's closer to the toe of the bat, but therefore it may be more suitable in the subcontinent where the ball bounces lower, probably not in Australia or New Zealand where the ball is going to be jumping quite high.
So you're pleased with the performance of it cricket-wise. You believe there are sustainability benefits. However, the laws of the game managed by the MCC, the guardians of the law, state that the blade of the bats must consist solely of wood. And in fact, bamboo is a grass, isn't it? And also the bats are laminated, is that right? So there's a pretty big obstacle there. Have you spoken or are you planning to speak to the MCC to show them your findings specifically?
We haven't spoken to them. We will be very keen to speak to them. And I think they're going to be looking at this in their next subcommittee meeting, for example. And we always knew that changing the MCC regulations would be a long shot. I think getting the bamboo passed would be quite straightforward, particularly because Malaysian cane and natural rubber are used in the handle, for example, and these are laminated and glued with PVA glue, for example. But I think it's predominantly the lamination aspect that may be the challenge. But as part of increasing the access and of the sport is concerned, perhaps these sorts of bats may be more suitable for junior level cricket or in schools, for example, to improve the health of kids and the uptake of the sport in physical education, for instance, but also considering the use of these materials in possibly training conditions, because the heavier bat may be suitable for coaching.
Yeah, because we know, of course, the laws of the game can be varied by playing conditions, country to country and tournament to tournament even. What about willow then, going back to that, because all these things are part of a wider industry. Cricket balls, leather comes from cows. There's the meat industry, leather being a byproduct. There is all sorts of things tied up. What else is willow used for if, say, further down the line, cricket bats, less willow was used, which is the sustainability part coming into it. But what knock-on could that have on the other uses that willow is currently used for?
Well, there are quite a few species of willow. The only species that is used in cricket bats is the Salix alba specific variety. But I do not think the love for willow is going to go away in any way. And as we've mentioned a number of times, as I think the bamboo is predominantly to supplement the supply and to offer a low-cost alternative, at least in the early stages potentially, or when a player wants to use that sort of material.
So as a former cricketer yourself, and you mentioned, Thailand under-19s, if a bamboo bat had been available for you to use then, would you have been happy to use one?
Definitely. If I was allowed to use it, I think I would go for it. I have preferred heavier bats generally anyways, and you would expect me to say yes, wouldn't you?
Naturally. Darshil, thanks so much for joining us on Stumped. Fascinating study, and we'll look with interest to see where it goes.
Thank you very much.
So that's Dr. Darshil Shah, who was involved in the research. It's a really interesting area, and why not constantly question and look to innovate, particularly as technology advances. I mean, who would have thought that we would have been playing Test cricket with a pink ball? Although many would say the jury is still out on the effectiveness of that. But yeah, we've had bats made of other materials in the past, haven't we? Jim, famously, Dennis Lillee with his aluminium bat. So, I mean, is this just opening up a healthy debate?
I think it's opening up a very healthy debate. What I'd be interested to know is the difference in cost of manufacture between bamboo and willow, because one of the most injurious costs that cricketers have to bear is buying bats. That's probably because Sachin Tendulkar and all the other famous people are making a pile of money by having their names attached to all these bats. But when it comes to cost, if it can be established that it's much cheaper with bamboo, perhaps there's a road to be pursued. But I think from what he was saying, the trampolining quality of the bat, even though it's heavier, may cause, as you suggested, the bowlers' union to strike. And strike very soon, because it sounds to me as if that ball is going to ping off the bat a bit like a golf ball does off of those trampolining metal drivers that everyone uses. So, I think as a sort of practice developmental area of the game, bamboo's got a future. But as a regular tool for conduct, for playing the game, not so sure. But it's a good discussion, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My stand, it's always going to be for innovation in just about every aspect of the game, and why not in terms of bats. But, Harshil makes several good points. For starters, I do think he's onto something very important, which is the continuing availability of English willow, because surely, even though I'm sure the forests are being managed professionally enough, they're not enough for a growing game, and cricket must grow. So I think there'll be severe stress on the supply of English willow. Of course, as you may know, there's Kashmir willow as well, which we tend to use in India and goes to other parts of the world as well. Now, that too is generally heavier than English willow, and which is why it hasn't really taken off, because the weight of the bat is a key element. And Harshil does suggest that bamboo is 40% heavier and could be a better training tool. I think quite the reverse, because when people are 10, 12, 13, the heavier bats are going to cause a lot of injury as well. So I'm not so sure about heavier bats unless they can be shaved, in terms of the weight and still have the same efficacy. So I'm sure there's a lot more research that's going to go into it. Scoop, yeah. Well, and, about Harshil's point about, being used in Indian conditions, we can get to that a little later, Alison, if you wish. But I just think it's nice to innovate. And as Jim said, I'm actually looking forward to more innovation in cricket balls, so that if the bowlers have a little more advantage, I think it'll be better for the game.
Well, it's often a disruption to the market, isn't it? Which then causes perhaps a change in law or that innovation to take on. And it was the aluminium bat that led to the change in law to say that the blade of the bat shall be made solely of wood. Well, you heard then, and we know that bamboo bats aren't currently legal because bamboo is a grass, but the MCC laws manager, Fraser Stewart, has said that MCC are interested in hearing more about how cricket generally could become more sustainable. Have a listen.
That is an area that really interests us in this research, actually, the whole sustainability angle. And all sorts of different woods have been tried by bat makers over the years, but none are as good as English willow. So MCC will look to engage with these researchers to learn more about, the cost differentials from willow and the techniques involved in making this a bat. And whilst it may be unlikely that the laws change to see bamboo bats being used in test matches anytime soon, if this research could help to create cheaper bats for lower levels of the game, particularly for children and those in less wealthy countries, then it's certainly something that is worth exploring.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is the effectiveness of the bat, isn't it, at a professional level? And Charu, you alluded there to an opinion on whether it will work better or not in the subcontinent due to bounce. But accessibility, if it is cheaper. And we know that laws of the game can be adapted via playing conditions, can't they? And so if bamboo does turn out to be cheaper, if it's more widely accessible and it works for certain levels of the game, why not?
Yeah, I wonder if they can lower the weight, which is the key here. And also, I mean, I'm not taking decisions for the ICC, but I do think that, if it's classified as a natural material, maybe bamboo can qualify rather than getting into the semantics of whether it's wood or grass. So there's something there for the ICC to think about. But about the Indian subcontinent, if you play the game, only the bottom inch or inch and a half really is a problem. And thereafter, most of the sweet spot is on the bottom end of the bat, the lower half of the bat. And the top half of the bat is the one that's really, not too useful at all, which is why the mongoose, for instance, was tried out, because the upper half is just an irritant.
Yeah, that was the one with the really long handle, wasn't it, the mongoose bat?
Yeah. So I'm not so sure that, it's much better suited for Indian conditions, because as it is, the lower half of the bat tends to have the sweet spot. In fact, it may be better for conditions away from India.
A broader question to consider, Jim, is just, where can cricket be generally more sustainable? Where can cricket lessen the size of its clumping carbon footprint? A very obvious one to me would seem the amount of travel that cricket internationally requires around the world and the air miles that are put in.
Yes, I suppose so. But that's one of the attractions of the game that we're being robbed of because of COVID, particularly in Australia. Unless you're a professional cricketer, you're not going to go anywhere other than interstate.
But even then, tours or tournaments could be better or more mindfully planned, couldn't they? So there's not quite so much crisscrossing of air travel between cities, even in countries like India and Australia.
You mean the permanent bubbles? Having everyone down at the Ageas Bowl or
I remember a Champions Trophy tournament in 2009 in South Africa, where the entire tournament was staged between Johannesburg and Centurion. And yes, you could argue that then deprives the rest of the country of seeing that tournament that is staged by South Africa as a whole. But it was a really compact and successful tournament just staged in the one city.
Well, it solves a lot of problems with getting people around the place and costs and the rest of it.
Just incidentally, Tanya Aldred wrote a really good piece in this year's Wisden Almanac about sustainability around travel, in particular in cricket, if you can get your hands on that. And another point of interest is that I've seen that the Extinction Rebellion, the cause highlighting climate change, they formed their own cricket team, and therefore using cricket as a vehicle to demonstrate the seriousness of the climate crisis. But there are lots of different angles we could go at. Cricket, should it be a vegan sport? The use of leather and the whys and wherefores. So the sustainability question is an ongoing one, but certainly one that we'll return to.